Howdy, folks. This is Big Tex. Welcome to the State Fair of Texas.
To the people of Texas, he's the most well-known Texas. If you go anywhere in the state and ask a Texan about Big Tex, they're going to know who he is.
Big Tex symbolizes so much, not only to residents of Texas and people, relate to him as being a Texan and representing the Lone Star State, but I think that people from all over the world relate to Texas hospitality and the friendliness of Texans. And so that's really what Big Tex stands for. He is everything. He's our brand. Our website is bigtex.com. He is branded everywhere.
This iconic Texas Giant is known for his hospitality, but also by his size.
I mean, he's 55 foot tall, he weighs 26,000 pounds, and he's sitting up there on a hill right here at the beginning of the fair. So when you come in, everybody sees him. And then when he talks, he waves, he moves his head back and forth, he'll wink at you, he'll blink. He does a lot of different stuff now, and people remember that.
He has a 95-gallon cowboy hat and 96 boots. That's the size of his boots. I don't know what size you wear. I wear an 8.5, so I can't even imagine a size 96 boot. And they weigh a lot, so it takes a lot to get them installed and up in Big Tex Circle. Big Tex's jeans are 434 by 240. That's a little different from what you and I wear.
Days before the fair opens, Big Tex is in preparation to welcome all fair goers.
We usually set him up a week before the fair starts, but the day before, that evening, we'll go ahead and pull him into the area. We'll take him down there, the final touches. We'll dress him as much as we can. We can put on his jeans. His boots don't go on to the very last thing, but we'll put on the top of a shirt, but he's actually on wheels. And we roll him down here. And so I can't put on the back of the shirt or tuck in his shirt or put it all together until I get him on a crane and lift those off. And then we can finish dressing him as he's suspended about 6 feet in the air, his shoulders, and we finish dressing him, and we actually use bungee cords and pull up his pants and tie him down. There's one occasion that I've heard about, but I can't find anything on it, that one year they lifted him up and his pants fell down. That's not going to happen under my watch. So currently what we do to raise Big Tex and put him up in the air is that, we start a little bit early, several days early. We get him ready. We have to wash his boots. We have to wash his frame before he gets dressed each year. So he basically gets a bath before we go up there. I have about 10 to 12 guys that come here. It's the same guys every year, and we dress Big Tex. We hook him onto the crane that we use, and we actually pick him up. It'll be 10 o'clock sharp. We take pride in that. We're going to lift him at exactly 10 o'clock on Friday morning, 1 week before the fair starts, and we take him and swing around and put him on the hill, at which time we bolt him down. We've got long bolts. They're probably about that long, and they're about that big around, and we'll put those in the holes and tighten the nuts, and then we torque them, and then we go back a couple of days later and torque them again. And then we take the boots up the hill and we put the boots on. They're in two halves, and we slide those together and lock them down. And then we actually have to go up inside of him, and he's got pins in his shoulders. Now his shoulders rotate like this and his head moves. So we have to put pins into his shoulders when we're picking him up, because this bearing up here won't support the weight of the whole thing. If you didn't have those in here, it wouldn't work. It wouldn't lift him. With the shoulders would separate, from the rest of the body. So once we get him up in the air, we take out those pins so his shoulders can rotate freely. But the left arm is what we put on each time, and it weighs a couple thousand pounds. So it takes a big forklift, and we have special strap points on it to where we can pick it up. It'll be level. We move it in and then bolt it into place. Big Tex, he stands like this, his palms up on his left hand, but when he's laying down, which way do you point it? So we actually have somebody lay down. We start like this and lay down just to see, make sure we have it right, because once we get him up in the air, it's too late. They used to lift Big Tex. They basically put up a pole and had him sitting down on the ground and ran wires down. Then they had water barrels suspended up here. Then they would fill them with water, and as it got heavier, Big Tex would slowly rise into a spot. They did it without a crane. I would love to see that kind of system, you know, on there, the history of it. That kind of stuff intrigues me. After that, they started using a crane to lift him. But back then, Big Tex, he was in many more different pieces. They'd lift him up and he wouldn't be totally dressed yet. They'd fly up his head separate and put the head on and the hat on, you know. It was all separated back then.
In the late 1940s, the small Texas town of Kerens wanted to attract holiday shoppers. So they built the world's largest Santa Claus.
In 1949, 1950, Kerens, Texas had trying to bring people to the town to do Christmas stuff. You know, they're all going to Corsicana, but they wanted to come there, so they're thinking up some gimmick to do that. So they built this Santa Claus.
My grandfather was one of the models for the current Santa Claus, which was then, after it, I think it stood here for about 3 years, then sold to the state fair. Well, he was a grocery store person, and he had a grocery store here, several locations here in town, and he was known as a big and a strong guy, and you know, tall, and actually he could pick up 600 pounds of feed and carry it out to the trucks. My grandfather was kind of a big and tall guy, and another guy named Howdy Mayo was kind of a big and round guy. So they measured around Howdy Mayo and measured the height of Mr. Spurlock and times those by 7, and that was the measurements for the Santa Claus for Kerens. My family's always had a little bit of a pride to go up to the Big Tex at the state fair, and we felt like it was like a family reunion of some sort, you know, and it's you know, and every now and then the fair would have the story of how it came to be, and it mentioned our town, and we had a little pride in that too, you know.
I'm Claire Jo McMillan from Kerens, Texas, and I'm 71 years old. I've lived here all my life. I was born and raised. We lived out on a farm, and I can remember Santa Claus the first time I was little, probably 5 or 6 years old, and we came to town from the farm, and it was amazing. It was just, if you've never seen, take you for instance, and they make you 20 times bigger than you are, it's just, we all stood down here at the dip and just looked at him. But we was in an old car, and you know, but it was amazing to see a Santa Claus that big.
So they built this Santa Claus, big Santa Claus, which was the forerunner of Big Tex. They used him for 49 and 1950. Then 1950 it didn't work anymore, so they were looking to, you know, sell him basically, or to move him. Earl Thornton was the president of the fair back then. Traveled down there, and they talked, and he bought the giant Santa Claus for $750, and then he became Big Tex. He worked with an artist named Jack Bridges, who they worked together and came up with the design, and you know, put him together, and Big Tex was born. He was going to be a cowboy for sure, and so he had to have the hat, the boots, and the shirt and jeans. The normal thing is Tex, you know, and he's big. So Big Tex, the fair staff came up with that name, and it's been with him ever since.
Over the years, Big Tex, it's been an evolution. You know, he started with just being out and actually he was in the Court of Honor in front of the Hall of State at first, and then he was moved over to Big Tex Circle where he resides today. But he had a winking eye at first, and that was ended up getting changed to where it was open after some feedback from fairgoers. And then there's been changes over the years to a friendly wave. He started talking, and then now he can turn his shoulders, and he can move his head, and he can wink, and he can blink. He can smile and talk, and he can actually point. So there's a lot of different things that he can do, which we're able to have some fun with relating to the state fair. So think if he points his finger, it might point down to the Chevrolet main stage where we have a musical act performing. So he might point to tell people to head down to the main stage before the concert begins.
By trying all 10 finalists yourself. This year's contest is presented by...
He didn't have a voice. The Big Tex on his first year didn't have a voice. That was added. Big Tex voice was added in 1953 for his second year. So every few years he added a different little trick that he does. And we have a special little things he can say about maybe somebody's got mustard on their shirt or something like that, like they're talking to the direct person, and it's fun to watch. He can speak about 2 different languages. He can speak, of course, Texan, and he can also do a little bit of Spanish. We have a large community around here, and we wanted to cater to them. They're Texans too.
The voice is just a piece of who Big Tex is. But it's important that he is not only welcoming folks to the fair, but he's also telling people about upcoming events that they can go to on the fairgrounds, what's coming, and making sure that they have enough time to get there. You know, there's been 6 different voices over the years, I believe, that have voiced for Big Tex, some longer than others. Jim Lowe did the voice the longest of Big Tex, and so he was here for a very long time. And now, you know, we're just so thankful to have an excellent voice who can really get across the Texas Southern drawl, speak slowly, and understand what we're trying to accomplish with Big Tex.
We wanted to get to the position where if the voice couldn't come here one day, maybe got sick or something like that, Big Tex will still talk.
You know, Big Tex says more than 100 messages every day. Some of those are recorded, some are live. After he came back after the fire of 2012, we decided that we wanted to keep who is the voice confidential, because we want the attention to be on the 55-foot cowboy instead of the voice that's behind him.
I never remember a day when Big Tex didn't talk. Big Tex does not get sick. He talks every day of the fair.
But what does it take to get the Giant Cowboy dressed up? Let's find out.
During the times that Big Tex has been around, there's been some pretty significant changes in his costumes or his clothes during the years. We come up with some different ideas and style of shirt that we want that year, or change of color or something like that. And it usually works out pretty good. We kind of talk it out before some of the drawings are made of what the shirt will actually look like. The clothes were made for the first year by H.D. Lee Company from Kansas. And he wore Lee clothes for quite a long time, up until about 1990, at which time Levi Strauss made the clothes for a year, and then we decided we needed a Texas company, and Dickie stepped right up and has been making the clothes ever since.
I designed his new shirt for this year and the next couple of years, depending on how the weather treats us. And so it was a great honor to be a part of the team. This was my first time designing for Big Tex, and so I was really excited to be a part of this. The theme is creativity, and so I said, okay, so Dickie's has a legacy in Fort Worth, and the State Fair has a legacy in Fort Worth, so why not do a generational theme? And so you'll notice details such as his double scalloped yoke is from the 1940s, and his shotgun cuff is from the 1930s, so kind of tying in those generational details to bring together the history and the legacy of both of us.
The jeans have always been made out of a denim, so just like the regular jeans you would wear, and they weigh about 250, 300 pounds depending on which style that you have. But then the shirt is made out of almost a canvas material. It has to be something that'll move with the wind, breathes a little bit, and he's got vents on the side of him, so you know the wind can. He didn't turn into a giant sail. They'll move around a little bit.
Definitely, with his clothes and things, we already have to replace those every 3 years due to normal wear and tear from the high winds and weather that he can face up there.
Back in 1961. Big Tex was set up for the movie State Fair starring Pat Boone, which is a very good movie if you haven't seen it. A lot of old footage of the fair and a little bit of Big Tex in here. They set him up early when Hurricane Carla was coming through and the tailwinds ripped his clothes. They finished filming the movie, but they had to kind of shoot around Big Tex because his clothes were ripped because of that. Back in 1964, he actually wore a serape on it. It was, about 60 feet long, and it was supplied by the Mexico's government. So, and it was for an event they were having here, some singers and stuff, that famous group from Mexico, and Big Tex actually wore that. In 1970, his clothes were still in a box out of the back of the pickup when they were trying to set him up. But the Lee Company got a quick phone call. They worked overtime, worked all night long, and got his new shirt down here, and he was dressed 9 hours before the fair opens. Back in 1982, he sported a burnt orange shirt. Well, when Texas and Oklahoma play here in the Cotton Bowl each year, the Oklahoma fans didn't like that too much. You know, he thought he was playing favorites. But Oklahoma turned around and won that game 28-22 that year, so I guess they got their revenge. We have a lot of football games that are played in the Cotton Bowl, usually 2 to 3 per year. But Big Tex, he doesn't have any favorites. He kind of stays neutral throughout the football games and the fair.
You know, although Big Tex has always been a cowboy, he has worn many hats.
There hasn't been a sponsor for his hat as far as I know, but he's had several variations of hat throughout the years. Back in 1966, his hat changed a little bit to LBJ's style of hat. You know, LBJ always wore a cowboy hat with a smaller brim, and he actually wore a hat like that back in that time. The one that he has on currently is one that'll stay on him. It actually doesn't come off. We can open up the crown of the hat, you know, and if we need to do some work on his eyes or something like that, but there's some, you know, we can tip it back. The boots used to be pretty standard on him. Most of the time they were red, but they were painted and it can change each year. A lot of times we'd have the boot sponsor's name on them in the early years. And we still do today. Currently,
Big Tex's boots are sponsored by Lucchese. So a few years ago, when he came back in 2013, he had a 1949 replica of a historic Lucchese boot that he wore for several years. Then last year, we chose to go with more of a Western design on his boots. And we said, hey, the theme for next year's State Fair is celebrating Texas creativity. Why not have a boot design contest where artists can enter their designs for Big Tex's boots and win and have their design on display on Big Tex and Big Tex Circle? He is one of probably the most photographed Texans in the world. So we ended up putting out the contest right after the fair, and we had hundreds of entries from all around the nation. Well, we narrowed it down to a top 10, and then we had a winner. Katie Sauceda from Keller, Texas was voted on by fairgoers through our social media and electronic channels. We ended up working with Lucchese over the past year to adjust the design to fit Lucchese's boots, and now they will be on display for the 2019 State Fair of Texas.
Everything that I drew on the boots, I have some connection to. So like on the boots I have, there's an oil derrick. There is a yellow rose of Texas. We have some cacti, blue bonnets, some bats flying out. That is from when I lived in Austin. So in the sunset, we go down to South Congress Bridge and watch all the bats fly out from underneath the bridge. So just all of my love affair for Texas. I think everything on there, the symbols represent Texas in a great way, and that's something that Big Tex is about. Big Tex is he's a very big, proud Texan. So I thought all of those would encompass him, his Texan pride, and something that he would be proud to wear.
since 2012, he's had a bigger pair of boots. They're bigger around because, you know, Big Tex is engineered. He weighs about 26,000 pounds, and he can withstand winds, hurricane force winds. Well, to do that, you have to have quite a big structure on there. So the size of his legs, how big they are a lot bigger than previous Big Tex. So the boots have to encase that. Each boot's in 2 halves, and it's about 750 pounds per boot. So we have to manhandle them, put them together, then move them around.
Big Tex has from time to time traveled outside the fairgrounds. For instance, back in 1953, Big Tex made an appearance for the Dallas JCs at a convention in Minneapolis. He also traveled and showed up at the 1955 50th homecoming celebrations at Abilene Christian College. Big Tex even traveled to his hometown of Kerens, Texas in 1981 to help celebrate the 100th anniversary of the city.
In 1981, the fair brought him down, or we had him brought back to Kerens because we were going to celebrate 100 years centennial. And we had a parade. We honored Big Tex. We played the band. The old ex-students of the band played. I played the first chair clarinet, and Big Tex came, and we just had a ball. It was just a blast to have him back here in Kerens, you know, with us and to celebrate. And that's the last time we got to see him, unless we go to the fair.
I remember we took a class picture. I went and got our pumper truck from the fire department. I've been a member of the fire department here since 1974. So I brought the big pumper truck down and parked in front of the Big Tex, and my whole senior class, you know, sat on it and took a picture for the yearbook. But the fire truck and Big Tex all right there at the end of Main Street.
777 is out at Big Tex. Got a rather tall cowboy, all his clothes burned off.
It was 2012, and it was a Friday morning, and it was just before opening. I get a phone call that says Big Tex is smoking, and I was thinking, Big Tex doesn't smoke, you know, so what's the deal? So I go down there pretty quick, and sure enough, he was smoking pretty good, and pretty soon you saw the flames come up, and we immediately called the fire department and got them out here. As the fire department rolls in and they start putting out the flames, his speakers are in his chest. They were actually caught on fire, and they put him out pretty quick. He's a big chimney, basically. You know, it was hollow in the center, so we didn't have much chance of putting him out without him being basically destroyed.
Mr. Harold Green recalls that day of the fair and will always remember.
When he was burning, it really was like Texas had a dagger cut to its heart. We had just left the fairgrounds. We live about 10 minutes from here. I turned on the TV. I heard all the sirens and the smoke, and I saw him in flames, and I really just started crying. It meant that much. He is the symbol of Texas. I'm 68, so I've been to 68 straight fairs, but then my mother, when she was pregnant, came, so I've been to 69 straight fairs.
When it caught on fire and burned, we all, actually, our town went in kind of a mourning, actually. There was an inflatable small Big Tex at my cousin's body shop on the, you know, and actually the whole town and this part of the county brought flowers and sympathy cards and put around it, you know, because it's this town and the Big Tex, you know, they kind of have a kinship, I guess you'd say, and you know, over all the years. Yeah.
At that point, you really saw how important Big Tex was to the fair and to the community and to the state of Texas. It actually made not only national news, but worldwide news. We had a lot of media out here that day, and I was talking with the police chief, and he got calls from police chiefs in Japan, Germany, even Hawaii out there, that it was on live TV and wanted to know what was going on here in Dallas. We actually called a crane company out here, and as soon as the fire trucks left, we picked him up. We laid him down on there. We put his axles back on him, and fair was open at this time. We had a bunch of people down, and we had a couple of police motorcycles out front, and we went ahead and covered him so we couldn't get ashes everywhere. And he went out, and as he left, people were actually had their hands over their hearts, they had their hats off. And that's when I realized how important Big Tex was to the people of Texas and the people of the fair.
Not only, you know, what he meant to the staff and everyone here at the State Fair of Texas, but what he meant to all fairgoers, to Texans, to people throughout the nation and around the world. When he burnt down, the news spread like wildfire, no pun intended, but and it was his brand and his face was everywhere. And so really the fair saw that as an opportunity to put him more at the forefront because he always meant so much to the fair. It allowed us to really put that out there when we rebranded and brought him back in 2013.
It was kind of an eye-opening moment on there. And it was at that point we knew right then and there Big Tex was coming back, and he was coming back bigger and better.
People from all over the world know who Big Tex is and want to visit the State Fair of Texas. A few years ago, the first season pass that we sold was sold to somebody in Australia. So it's fascinating every year when we see all of this happen. A few years ago, we partnered with Visit Dallas to do a map behind Big Tex. We had the United States, we had Texas, and then we had the world. And people could come up and take a dot, it was a colored dot, and they would place it on where they were from. And it was fascinating to see all of the different places from around the world where people were from, and now they're here in Texas, whether they're living here or visiting, but to come and enjoy the State Fair of Texas. We worked with SRO Associates, which is down in Boerne, Texas, and I remember reading that Eddie Snell, who heads up the company, he said, you know, there's no manual for building a 55-foot talking cowboy. So it was definitely one of those tasks that the fair took on in partnership with our great partners, and made it happen to bring him back for the following year, because we were not going to have a fair without Big Tex standing in Big Tex Circle.
For state fairgoers this year and generations to come, Big Tex will be there to welcome visitors and to bring big smiles just about to everyone.
Thanks for joining me today at the State Fair of Texas. Hope to see y'all again soon.
Howdy folks, welcome to the State Fair of Texas.
Howdy folks, welcome to the State Fair of Texas.
Howdy folks, welcome to the great state of Texas. Well, that's not what I was supposed to say. Howdy folks, welcome to the great State Fair of Texas.
Howdy folks, welcome to the great State Fair of Texas.
Howdy everybody, welcome to the great State Fair of Texas.